From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Thanks very much, Ollie Barrett. How you doing? It's Thursday. It is Thursday. It's the 3rd of October 2019. This is the Richie Allen Show, live from Salford in Greater Manchester. Got a good programme lined up for you. Do participate as usual by tweeting at Richie Allen Show. Send me a tweet. Look forward to hearing from you. Let's get on with the old show today then. Let's do it. Let's do it, bejesus.
Well, bring out the gimp.
It's the Richie Allen Show. Broadcasting live on richieallen.co.uk and multiple platforms around the world. And now, here's your host, Richie Allen.
Yeah, I've got a lot of interesting things for you and I to talk about during the course of the next hour to hour and 10 minutes, Thursday's programme. Live on Fab Radio 2 in Manchester, triggerwarning.tv, my own website, and all the other platforms where the programme does air. And I'm not going to dwell too much on the old Brexit stuff today, just a tiny bit, because I know there's fatigue. I know that. As on Tuesday's programme, we'll dwell a little bit more on the human interest in today's programme. So, lots to get into on the old show. Are you well? It's gone very cold, hasn't it? I wonder, is Ireland getting battered? I hope it isn't, but the west coast of Ireland is supposed to be getting the last dying gasps of breath of Hurricane Lorenzo. At least I have seen that on the weather forecasts this afternoon. And I've got an interest in the west of Ireland, of course, my great pal. Oh, I won't say old Jean Ann, she's not old. Oft mentioned Jean Ann is there in Cleggan. I wonder how it's, is it blowing a gale there yet? I hope it isn't too bad anyway. There you go. Did Ollie mention in the news, because I wasn't paying much attention to it, I was still feverishly adding stuff to the playout system, but did he mention the story in Paris today? It's interesting because I wish sometimes, I wish this was television, but only sometimes. I much prefer to be doing this radio. But when this story became, how do I phrase this? When British television news companies became aware that people had been killed in Paris today, their behaviour was hilarious. They went into overdrive. I wish I could show you the video clips, because they were thrilled. You know, this was thrilling. They thought, yes, here we go again. There is a major terrorist incident in Paris. I bet they were booking flights for their chief anchors, with a W, chief anchors, to go to Paris to broadcast from there for the next 3 days. But then it turned out that it's just somebody who's just gone mad. A man has killed 4 people at police headquarters in Paris, in obviously the French capital, Paris. And he hasn't been named yet, but he's an employee of the police there, and he was shot dead by the police before he could do any more damage. French media says he's 45 and he had worked in an administrative capacity for the Paris police force for 20 years in the intelligence division. And he's got some grievance or something, but he went a bit mad and he went on a rampage with a knife. Dreadful thing, of course, for anybody to be caught up in anything like that. You wouldn't like it, would you? But you should have seen the initial conduct or carry on of the television media here when they thought, wow, we might have a terrorist attack on our hands. Excellent. That will brighten up an otherwise dull Thursday. Hey, book the flights. Get Kay in front of a camera in Paris with a mournful looking dog. Dreadful stuff. Anyway, as I said, I wasn't paying attention to Ollie's bulletin, so I don't know if he... I'm sure he did mention it. Now, just a brief Brexit report, or a brief Brexit roundup. Boris Johnson did take to his feet in the Commons today to address MPs and tell them, basically, or give them more information about the proposals that he's made to the European Union. He said, and I quote, he has made a genuine attempt to bridge the chasm to get a fresh Brexit deal with the European Union. He told the House of Commons about his plan, which would see Northern Ireland stay in the single market for goods but leave the customs union, was a compromise. But it's been criticised. Jeremy Corbyn said it was unrealistic and it was damaging. And the Irish Taoiseach Leo Varadkar has said the new plans were welcome but fall short in a number of areas. And I believe Donald Tusk has been opining today as well. He's the outgoing European Council president. He said that the European Union was open but was unconvinced by Johnson's plans. Here's a brief snippet from Boris Johnson in the Commons today. You will hear him, the Prime Minister, and then the Leader of the Opposition, Jeremy Corbyn. Just a brief snippet.
Our European neighbours choose not to show a corresponding willingness to reach a deal, then we shall have to leave on October the 31st without an agreement. And we are ready to do so. But that outcome would be a failure of statecraft for which all parties would be held responsible. I hope that the House can now come together in the national interest behind this new deal to open a new chapter of friendship with our European neighbours. Let us seize this moment to honour our overriding promise to the British people: respect Brexit, get Brexit done, and I commend this statement to the House.
And Jezza Corbyn then? What did he say?
What we have before us is a rehashed version of previously rejected proposals. He is doing nothing but seeking to divide and risking this country's future for his own political gain. An America First deal with President Trump. The proposals are unrealistic and damaging and will, as I think the Prime Minister full well knows, be rejected in Brussels, rejected in this House, and rejected across this country.
Well, it's all dead in the water. Again, we will step away from Brexit with just the reminder that I believe Johnson is setting himself up to look like he's done all that he can and that he has been true to his word, so that when we do not leave on October 31st, as he has repeatedly stated we will, that he can then pit himself as the champion of the people in the next general election cycle and campaign. That's how I see it anyway. All right, the European Union is not going to accept it, and members of Parliament are going to make sure that he cannot leave with no deal and that he must get an extension, regardless of what he says. He's setting himself up to be the hero of the people, but we're not that stupid, are we? Are we? We're not that stupid. All right, let's leave it there. It's 11 minutes past the hour. Couple of quick techie stories which are of, I think, great interest. Chris Fox is a technology reporter with the BBC. You sometimes see him on BBC News at 1. And he is reporting today that Facebook can now be ordered to remove posts everywhere in the world. Why? Because this is a result of what has been described landmark ruling from the European Union's highest court. Let me read a bit of this. It's very relevant to you because I know that you spend some of your time on Facebook talking about these issues, don't you? Don't you? I know you do. Facebook and similar apps and websites can be ordered to take down illegal posts worldwide after a ruling from the European Union's highest court. Platforms may also have to seek out similar examples of the illegal content and remove them instead of waiting for each one to be reported. One expert told the BBC it was a significant ruling with global implications. You're damn right it has global implications. Facebook said that the judgment raised critical questions around freedom of expression. You're damn right it raises critical questions about freedom of expression. This came about, this whole case, because of an insulting comment posted on Facebook about about an Austrian woman, a politician, whose name is very difficult to pronounce, but I'll give it a go anyway. It's Eva Glavishnig Pieszczek. I think I did all right there. Eva Glavishnik-Pieszczek. She's an Austrian politician, and somebody posted an insulting comment about her on Facebook. Now, Austria's own court said this insult damaged her reputation. That's how this came about. Now, under European Union law, Facebook and other platforms are not held responsible for illegal content posted by users until they have been made aware of it and given a chance to remove it. But that's going to change now. That's going to change. Okay? Austria's Supreme Court ruled and asked Europe's highest court to clarify this, and Europe's highest court has clarified and has said this: if a country in the EU finds a post on Facebook or on Twitter or on Instagram illegal in its courts, by the way, so if a European country's court system finds a post illegal, it can order websites and apps to take down identical copies of the post. The ruling says platforms can be ordered to take down equivalent versions of an illegal post if the message conveyed is essentially unchanged. Platforms can be ordered to take down illegal posts worldwide if there is a relevant international law or treaty. And Facebook can't do a damn thing. It is unable to appeal against this ruling. Professor Steve Pearce from the University of Essex told the BBC Today, if there's a court order to say that someone's been defamed, Facebook has to also search for different variations of the defamation. This is staggering stuff. Do you get the implications of this? You do. I think you do. There's no need for me to rubber stamp it. Privacy campaigner Max Schrems said the ruling could have huge implications for Facebook's closed groups. And there are many closed groups on Facebook, many tens of thousands, that discuss issues like, I don't know, chemtrailing, geoengineering, vaccines, I don't know. Right? Right. The onus is going to be on Facebook now to seek out defamation or what has been deemed to be illegal by courts in European Union countries. Facebook will have to get rid of it. Yeah, not good. I'll leave that there. I'm sure we'll return to it. And thanks to Matt in Massachusetts who sent me this today. Just a bit of a tech story before we move on. Chinese citizens must pass a facial recognition test to use the internet as part of Beijing's social credit system. This is in the Daily Mail, which says that China has stepped up its own internet censorship by demanding that citizens pass a facial recognition test in order to be able to use internet services. So in China, from now on, if you want to have the internet installed at your house or on your phone, you must have your face scanned by the Chinese authority to prove your identity. This is true. I shit you not. The rule will take effect on December 1st, is said to be part of the social credit system, which, in case you didn't know, rates the Chinese citizens based on their daily behaviour. At the moment, a Chinese person needs to show his or her ID card while applying for a landline telephone or the internet. But from December 1st, they'll have to use facial recognition to access those services. This has been issued, this directive, by the Chinese Ministry of Industry and Information Technology, and a number of listeners to this programme are convinced that some version of this system will be in place in Europe and in the United Kingdom in the very, very near future. Amazing. 18 minutes past the hour. Thanks to Matt. Loads to get through, so I want to crack on. This is of great interest to parents in the UK. You might have been following the story of 5-year-old Tafida Rakib. She's been on life support, as the young girl, since February. She had a brain injury back in February. She's been at Royal London Hospital. and the doctors there wanted to take her off life support. But her parents wanted to take her to Italy, to Genoa, in fact, where a hospital there, which is renowned for treating these injuries, has said that they're happy to treat her and to look at her case with a different set of eyes and opinions. But doctors here said no, they wanted to take the child off life support and that the parents were overruled. However, the High Court ruled this morning, and this is very important, I think, that she should be allowed to travel to Italy to continue her treatment, which is a marvellous thing. So her parents, they've got funding now. I think they've had some assistance through crowdfunding to take her to the Gaslini Children's Hospital in Genoa in Italy. Her doctors in London are properly cheesed off about it, and they've continued to say that the decision is wrong, that they're right, and that there's no need to continue to treat the child because the child is effectively brain dead. The parents said, look, we're from a Muslim family, and Islamic law, or Islamic belief, Islamic faith, says that only God can take the decision to end her life, because by taking her off life support, she's obviously going to die. I'm delighted. I really am. I don't know these people, but I think it's an excellent decision. Bosses at Bart's Health NHS Trust, which runs the hospital in London, are being critical of the decision today. They wanted the judge to rule that ending the child's life support, ending her life, was in her best interests. Whatever happened to the Hippocratic Oath, eh? First, do no harm. Removing a child from life support is doing harm. I would have thought that taking somebody off life support is in contravention of the oath that every doctor takes before going to work in private practice or for the NHS. You can hear the mum anyway, Shalina Begum. Here's the mum. Apologies for the audio. Just taken outside the court. There's a lot of external noise, environmental noise, but I think you might just be able to make out what the mother is saying, Shalina Begum.
Our beautiful daughter Tafida is not dying, and we are continuously seeing small but important signs that she is gradually improving. But we have always been hopeful that she might make something of a recovery if she is given the time and the right treatment to continue. We have always had Tafida's best interests at heart, and we have never wanted to come to court to argue for our rights to seek continued care in a world-class hospital willing to give her the treatment she needs. The entire experience of having to fight for our daughter's life over the last 3 months has been exhausting and traumatic for all my family members. And we are glad that it is now finally over.
Yeah, good for them. So I've been asked, what's the law? Well, I did a bit of research. The law is basically the Children's Act of 1989, which deals with parental responsibility. There is a law here. And the Children's Act of 1989 gives parents the responsibility broadly to decide what happens to their child, including the right to consent to medical treatment. But it's not absolute, this, because if a public body considers that the parents' choices are not in the best interests of the baby, as was the case here with this family, okay, if a public body says, well, their choices are not in the best interests of the child, and if they can't find an agreement, it can be challenged in court and a judge will make the final decision. Okay? I mean, you know, it's very unlikely, thankfully. The odds are that you'll never have to worry about that, but I think it's important. And I think the High Court made the proper decision today. And the child will hopefully travel to Italy. And we'll see what happens then thereafter. 22 minutes past the hour. This is very interesting. Scotland will today become the first country in the UK to ban the use of force to discipline children. A vote in the Scottish Parliament, which is taking place about now, or it might have just taken place, was pretty much guaranteed to be carried. Currently, parents and carers who smack their children on the body can claim a defence of reasonable chastisement. That's the way it currently is. But under the new legislation, children would be given the same protection from assault that adults currently possess. Right, you get that? All right. Scottish Green MSP John Finney, he introduced the legislation, wants MPs to back it because he says there is overwhelming evidence that exposure to any level of violence is detrimental to the well-being of children and their development. Scotland, he says, and indeed the other countries of the UK, are at odds with the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, which makes it clear there's an obligation on states to ensure children are not exposed to violence. BBC's Victoria Derbyshire had a very interesting debate on this earlier today. Here's Jamie Gillies. Jamie is a Christian and he's a member of the so-called Be Reasonable campaign. He thinks this is a very bad idea, and he explains why here.
To say that the Be Reasonable campaign is a very broad coalition, so there are Christians involved with it, but there are also child psychologists, sociologists, criminologists, MSPs and MPs, really they reflect the view of thousands of parents across the country who, many of them use that light smack on the hand or on the backside with their children sometimes. And you know, there are many parenting techniques. Our campaign is not saying that people should use smacking or shouldn't use smacking. We're saying that parents should have the right to use different parenting techniques within the reasonable bounds of the law as it stands, which does differentiate between what's reasonable and what's abuse. And if parents really should be free to bring up their kids as they see fit. And the state should not be interfering in a disproportionate way, in a way which is going to divide families and pit parents against each other and children against their parents. And all of the distress that's caused by a police investigation and a social work investigation in a family far outweighs any perceived harms of a tap on the hand.
I don't know why it
would
divide families. Why would it divide families if it was against the law?
So there, some family lawyers this week spoke out. There's a family law specialist in Wales at the largest family law firm there. She issued a statement last month and said that a smacking ban could cause real turmoil in families. It would interfere with... so in family court proceedings, for instance, when parents are going through a divorce, they might use false allegations of smacking when fighting for custody of a kid. And she also talked about how children would be divided from their parents. So if the police need to investigate a family, that might involve removing a child from their parents during the prosecution. And that's something that's very distressing to a young child and which could, you know...
Okay.
I like what he had to say there, James Gillies, particularly about family courts and the implications in proceedings. And I liked him saying the state should not be interfering in this way in the family home. Not when we're talking about a smack on the hand or a smack on the arse. I like what he says. Despite being against violence and despite swearing by God and Sonny Jesus that if we're ever blessed with a child, we wouldn't smack on the arse or smack on the hand. That being said, I wouldn't, want to see people spoken to by the authorities because they might have given a smack on the arse or a smack on the hand. Now, for a bit of balance on this, Jane Evans is a parenting coach and she strongly disagrees and thinks the ban on smacking is a great idea.
The realities are it's not going to get to that level. Our poor social work system can't cope with children who are being brutally abused every day. So we mustn't scare parents about this. That's diluting and diverting the attention away. As Mary keeps bringing up the children.
Well, let me ask you about the children.
It keeps diverting attention away from the children and their needs, not the parents.
What is the evidence? What does the science say about smacking a child?
There's huge amounts of science now to show that when we scare...
That's usually an indication that the plaintiff, in this case, let's call her the plaintiff, Jane Evans, doesn't have any scientific information. What's the scientific information? There's huge evidence. Well, just give me some. Give me some scientific evidence that a child who gets the occasional smack on the backside for doing something that could have caused harm to the child or whatever, goes on to be violent or aggressive or depressed or whatever. Give us the evidence.
Scare a child repeatedly. And let's be clear, it's not so much the physical...
No evidence, mind.
...pain. We can't always remember the level of physical pain, but what we do remember is the shock factor, and we remember the shame.
The humiliation, the embarrassment at having been given a smack on the arse. That's it, isn't it? It's not about physical injury or pain. I'm not saying I agree with this now. I'm trying to be the devil's advocate here. And I got a few smacks on the arse. I got other stuff as well, as I said this morning. But I got a few smacks. It didn't do me any harm, right?
It's very shaming to be smacked.
Yeah, it is.
And most importantly, the fear. When somebody, you know, a tiny child or whatever size child, children are totally dependent on the adults around them. They can't just pick up their phone and purse and walk out the door. They depend on them for love and they depend on them for safety. So when we muddy the waters in this way, oh yes, I'm going to be really loving to you until you do something and then I'm going to hit you, it gives children a roadmap for relationships.
I mean, do you see a differentiation between a parent hitting a child and a light tap on the back of the hand?
Not really, because again, it
is
dilutes.
different, though.
But the thing is, if we were in an adult relationship, so if I in a way where it was clear I wasn't just tapping you on the arm in a hi, how are you, but I was tapping you on the arm because you'd annoyed me, we wouldn't be mulling over was it a tap, a hit. It would be an assault, actually.
It's a good point, that, Jane, but it also speaks to the point made by the earlier guest, Jamie Gillies. That's a decent point, but what about asking a child repeatedly not to do something that might be dangerous and being ignored, right? And then, right, we'll have to be a little bit more strict here. A raised voice is not working. Maybe a slap on the arse, maybe. What do you think of this? Because my big concern about this is that this is not just about a genuine concern that smacking children on the backside or on the hand is somehow going to lead to maladjusted, socially, I don't know, awkward, depressed children or young men and women in the future. This is about the state doing all it can and thinking up new ways to encroach on family life. Because we're not talking about some of what I had to deal with, which was violence. We're talking about a smack on the arse, a smack on the wrist. What do you think? Is it a stretch here to say that this is about an agenda? I mean, in Scotland is the birthplace of the Named Persons Act, which is even scarier again, where the state appoints a guardian outside the family for every child in Scotland. Jesus Christ. You know, no good can come of that. Let me know what you think on Twitter. It's at Richie Allen Show. At Richie Allen Show. What are we? We're 29 minutes to the top of the hour, so I'm going to take a musical break and I'll read some of your comments when I come back. And I've got some more interesting stories. Extinction Rebellion. We'll have a chat about them in about 3 minutes' time after music from Marty and Wet, Wet, Wet. This is your Richie Allen Show for Thursday, October 3rd, 2019. I am Richie Allen. Lovely to have your company. Wet, 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 Dan, Sweet Little Mystery on the Richie Allen Show. Salford and Greater Manchester. Salford and Greater Manchester. Massive evening for Salford tomorrow. Salford Red Devils go to the, what's it called? The DW Stadium, is it? In Wigan to play Wigan Warriors. And the winner will go to the grand final in Old Trafford in a few weeks' time. It's the biggest game in the history of Salford Red Devils, and you can feel the buzz around Salford. It's amazing. It really is. Rugby league, a fantastic, proper working class sport, rugby league. And Salford Red Devils tomorrow evening up to the DW Stadium. They'll bring about 6,000 fans with them, and I really hope they do well tomorrow. I've been to see the Red Devils a few times with my friend Tez, whom I've mentioned before. He loves it, lives it, breathes it, sleeps it, rugby league, and it's a fantastic sport to watch live. The lovely thing about it is it's very affordable. It's not the garish corporate crap that soccer has become. It's a community-based sport still, and it's affordable. People can afford to go and watch it, and the players are accessible. It's live on Sky Sports tomorrow, Friday. I'm getting a bottle of red wine in for it. I'm going to sit down and I'm going to pray to, I don't know, to who? To Jeebus. Who would I pray to? Who would I pray to? But I'm gonna say a few novenas for Salford. That's tomorrow night, Friday. You can feel the buzz around Salford. I was out jogging this morning, and I must have passed. It was a lovely morning. It was bright, but it was chilly. But I must have passed 3 or 4 different groups of people, and the buzz was about the game. And I saw banners in windows and people wearing the jerseys. Fantastic if they could beat Wigan tomorrow night and then play St. Helens, the mighty St. Helens, in the final in a few weeks' time. Viva Salford. What a place to be Salford is. Right, let's move on. Extinction Rebellion are a shower of fucking bastards. It's almost like a self-destruct button. There's a friend of mine who's been a radio presenter very successfully for many years in Ireland. And he's won Presenter of the Year. He's a wonderful guy. And he says to me, in jest, but I know he means it as well. He says, I listen, Richie, some days when I've got the time. And it sounds so brilliant and so professional, he says. I'm not bigging myself up now. He says this. And then he says you throw an F-bomb in there. And it just ruins the whole professional sound of the programme. I know, but I'm well aware of that, you see. So maybe it's deliberate, maybe. Right. Extinction Rebellion took a fire engine into London today. And they filled it with nearly 2,000 litres of fake blood. Kind of paint, right? And where did they take it? To the Treasury building. And they wanted to spray it on the Treasury building. Well, because, don't you know, we're all going to fucking die if they don't go out on the streets, cause disruption to traffic and businesses, and spray buildings with red paint. That's why they're doing it, because we're all going to die. These idiots lost control of the hose and drenched themselves in the fucking red fake blood paint, whatever. And also, about a dozen passers-by minding their own business had their days ruined because they were doused in this shit that's probably made of some chemical that's probably not good for you. Muppets. When are the police going to do something about these people? Anyway, the Shadow Chancellor of the Exchequer, John McDonnell. Right. What an idiot John McDonnell is. He was on BBC Radio 2 today with Jeremy Vine. And John McDonnell tells Jeremy Vine, and you will hear this in a moment or two, that Labour's number one priority in the next election, above all else, well, it's climate change. More important than jobs, more important than the NHS, more important than Brexit, more important than social care. God damn it, it's more important than everything. Honestly, that's priority number one, climate change. And John McDonnell is entertaining these days members of Extinction Rebellion and is listening to them and is drawing up policy plans based on what these snowflakes are telling him. Here's McDonnell speaking with Jeremy Vine at lunchtime on BBC Radio 2 today.
And we've now gone through a really rigorous process. We've been taking as much scientific and technical advice as possible. We've been meeting with campaigners. I had the Extinction Rebellion group come and talk to my Treasury team and go through some of the issues there.
You know what they've done today?
Yes, I have. And I know people will get angry at some demonstrations or whatever, but
why would they get angry, John? Being doused from head to toe in toxic fucking red blood, you're going about town minding your own business? Eh? This cheeses me off. Wait till you hear what he says.
You know, I'm in favour of direct action if it means you're bringing to the... And it doesn't hurt anyone, non-violent direct action.
With red paint?
Well, occasionally you have to do a bit of, you know...
Really? So you'd say, look, that's okay. No one got hurt?
No one got hurt.
Spray the Treasury?
No one got hurt, and it has attracted the attention on this particular issue. But I would say to them as well, actually, if it's costing money, that's public money, so be very careful what you do.
But on this one occasion, that's worth it to catch the attention.
Is it worth it, John? To drench people in fake blood who've been walking on the pavement because you lost control of the hose, because you couldn't organise a fucking piss up in a brewery. You're that thick. You didn't realise that running 2,000 gallons of liquid through a pressure hose on a fire engine might take Jeff fucking Capes, Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant to hang on to it. You're that thick you didn't know that. You lose the hose and it causes carnage and douses people. But that's okay, is it? If you believe in climate change. Is it, John McDonnell?
I think sometimes you have to catch the attention in that way. I think you always have to be careful, and it's got to be non-violent. But
But it was violent, because if you're walking down the street and somebody hoses you, even if it's inadvertently, with fake blood, I mean, you should have seen the people. I'm not joking. It was Armageddon for those people hit by that hose. That's violent. That's an assault on your dignity, on your human right to walk down the street and not be confronted by one of these fucking useless, hysterical, bullshitting goons who haven't a scientific brain cell between them. They have no idea what's going on. But it's all right, is it, John, if you believe in it?
This has woken us up to the issue.
Wish I was Jeremy Vine just for a minute.
We weren't talking about this issue effectively 2 years ago until this movement got going, particularly the youngsters started going on strike from school. It wasn't on the agenda for many politicians.
Greta Thunberg, I guess, is a big part
exactly.
of it.
It wasn't on the agenda for many politicians, and I thank those youngsters that came out. I pay tribute to them.
Yeah, I pay tribute to people who block up Deansgate in Manchester for a couple of days and cost thousands of pounds worth of business to small businessmen and women who've got families and children and employees. I'm proud of them. Good stuff. The people who block up central London and did the same, causing carnage based on a pack of lies, I'm proud of them. It's brilliant. And we should be listening to them. Imagine. Do you see the state of some of these people that he wants us to listen to?
And the Extinction Rebellion, I think they've done a very good job. Sometimes, it goes over the top and gets a bit annoying, but actually it's worth it getting the message across.
Yeah, because it doesn't bother you, John, because you don't have to deal with the consequences of it, do you? And then I did say at the outset, didn't I, that he claimed that climate change is Labour's top priority from now on in. Just in case you thought I was telling porky pies, here he is. John McDonnell.
For us, what it's done for us, so what we've done now, we said, look, our main priority in going into government now, I know Brexit is important, but our main priority now is actually tackling climate change. That's going to be our number one priority. The way we're going to do that is mobilise the resources of the government, linking up with our industries, linking up with the finance sector as well, to basically decarbonise the economy, which means...
Decarbonise the economy. So you're going to work with industries to decarbonise the economy. That's another way of saying we are going to end manufacturing and decimate industry in the United Kingdom. It's as simple as that. You know who I am, right? I'm no conservative, leaning, right-wing lunatic who's in the clutches of big oil and gas. You know this. This is what he's saying. We're going to decarbonise the economy. We're going to end industry in the UK, is what John McDonnell is saying. This is priority number one.
Which means alternative fuel sources, wave, wind power, solar power.
Do you want cycle lanes everywhere?
Well, I'm afraid, what we've got to do is look at our transport overall. I know some people have found the cycle lanes a bit disruptive when they've been putting in, but cycling is the way forward. The issue for us, and we at Labour Party conference, we put forward a programme. We're talking about £500 billion of investment over 10 years. That will enable us basically to decarbonise large parts of our transport system. It will enable us to promote alternatives like cycling, but also we sat down with the automobile companies, the motor manufacturers, to talk about what do you need now to move us into electric cars and buses, etc., on a scale. So we're working with them about battery plants.
It's just, if we're emitting no carbon, I think you're going to have to change every boiler in the country.
Do you know, over time...
That's true as well, Jeremy.
Over time, that's exactly what the Climate Change Committee has recommended. Over time,
but
that's
exactly
what...
The expense of that. I was hoping mine was going to last 20 years.
I know, but it's too expensive not to. It's too expensive.
But what a waste to be throwing that amount of boilers away.
But at the moment, if we don't change how we heat and how we energise our economy and our homes, etc., we won't be here.
Right.
Our children and grandchildren will never forgive us.
I understand.
What kind of fuckery are you?
I understand, says Jeremy Vines. Okay, I understand. Nothing to see here. Please disperse. Don't do your job. Don't ask him any questions. Every boiler in the country. I couldn't even begin to imagine the expense of that. Or the amount of carbon that you would generate in doing that. and breathe. Madness. Decarbonise the economy. Why? Because we're all going to die. And I admire them when they go into London and douse people in blood and assault them and threaten people and glue themselves to buildings. I admire them. They're brilliant. They're only doing it for our benefit. And they'll never forgive us if we don't change our ways. It is 14 minutes to the top of the hour. Hey, listen, let's have a look at a few tweets, because I did promise I would do that. Hi to Susan. Hi to Chris, who tweets, so what is the science that says Let me start that again. What is the science, says Chris, that says anthropogenic climate change is a thing? Anthropogenic meaning human, of course. Extinction Rebellion had a chat with an old friend and his daughter, who were horrified when I put the scientific-based stuff I've heard from Piers Corbyn to them. Good. Hi to Mark Best, who says the homeless will be thrilled by the climate change priority, but Labour has no chance of power anyway, says Mark. Thank you, Mark. Faisal tweets, imagine if somebody sprayed Tony Blair's house with a fake blood fire hose because of his support of illegal wars. They'd be choked by an immediate police avalanche, says Faisal. Very good point, Faisal. Very good. Very true. Surely it's a criminal offence, that stunt, asks Joe Public. Yes, mate. I would have thought so. Sharon Gale says, who let these idiots turn up in a fire truck for this event? Good question. Cartoon Drunk says he would get violent with anyone who doused him in red paint. Fair enough. I wouldn't get violent, Cartoon Drunk. I would perform a citizen's arrest on them. I wouldn't hit them. I wouldn't kick them. I wouldn't spit at them. I wouldn't injure them in any way. I would just grab a hold of them while somebody else calls the police. By the way, your power of citizen's arrest even is very easy to explain. It's very simple. You can only make a citizen's arrest if you yourself witness an act of crime, a criminal act. You can't make a citizen's arrest if somebody says to you, that man over there punched that man over there. You have to see it yourself. And if it happens to you, you can do the same thing. If they'd have doused me in red paint today, I would have taken one of them off the top of that fucking fire engine and sat on him until the police came along. But not hit him. Don't be going around punching people. It's no good. You become as bad as them. I would say just hold on to them till the police arrive. Yeah, bunch of fucking goons. They couldn't organise a piss up in a brewery right in front of a building with a fire truck, and they lost control of the hose. Muppets. Hi to Luke. On smacking children, Gail says, I was smacked, mostly chased into the bathroom, if I was very cheeky. I did smack rarely, only if my boys ran into the road or nearly did and scared me. I mostly tried distraction tactics, or I walked away and calmed down first and then talked. Well, Gail, I certainly wouldn't, and I don't think any of our listeners would accuse you of being abusive for giving a smack on the arse to a child who scared you for nearly running into the road. It's not child abuse. Absolutely not. And the government should not be interfering in that, because where does it lead? William says, I did used to say that I would never smack my kids, but that soon changed when I actually had them. I myself used to get the belt, although I would never get that far or go that far myself. But my dad, who gave me the belt, was raised in Glasgow slums in the 1940s. They were tougher men, tougher times. I agree with you, William. Absolutely right. Jason says the smacking ban is going to lead to more unruly children in schools, and heaven knows how much crime in their adult lives, says Jason. That's interesting, Jason. Antonio tweets, Richie, this is to discourage couples from having children. It's part of the depopulation agenda, says Antonio. Antonio, that might be a stretch, but I understand where you're coming from, because there is an agenda to stop people procreating and having children. We know that, Antonio. So you might be onto the right track there, maybe, my friend. We talked on the YouTube thing this morning, didn't we, about libido dying out in people. It's not dying out, it's effing well gone for a lot of people. Hi to Paul Paranoid, who found my characterisation of wet, 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 sweet little mystery to be amusing. David Stanford says, about the woman who talked about shame and fear for smacking children, Jane Evans. That ends up with, Mrs. Smith, we need to take little Johnny into care because he is scared you will lose social credits and will feel ashamed at the Good Citizen School meetings. That's interesting, David. Sharon Gale says the same, well, something similar on Twitter. Sharon Gale knows, sadly, all too well what the family courts can do to a family. It can destroy them. And I've had Sharon on the programme a couple of times talking about that. Let's move on then and talk about something else. It's coming up for 8.5 minutes. I don't know how long this will go on for. I'm thinking another 20 minutes or thereabouts. I love irony. Do you? Do you like irony? Good old irony. It used to be said one time that Americans never understood irony. Do you remember that? That the Yanks didn't get irony. That was bullshit, of course. We used to say that in Europe, in England, in Ireland. The Americans don't understand irony. It's not true. But if they don't understand irony, they are now not alone. They're not alone anymore. Because the UK's political class has lost its sense of irony too. Let's hear from Jess Phillips. Jess Phillips. The Birmingham Yardley MP, Labour. I don't like Jess. I think I've said that before, so I won't say it again. Jess Phillips has a book out, and it's called Truth to Power. 7 Ways to Call Time on BS. Truth to Power, 7 Ways to Call Time on BS by Jess Phillips. Yeah, I know.
What kind of fuckery is this?
I know. Calling Time on BS from Jess Phillips. Here's a bit of irony. She was on Good Morning Britain this morning to promote this, and to promote herself, of course. Susanna Reid, the host, was annoyed, understandably, seemed to be annoyed to be talking with a woman about her book on BS, especially this woman, and asked Jess Phillips about Labour's manifesto. Last election cycle. Remember Labour's manifesto? Their promise to honour the referendum result. Susanna Reid digging down into Jess Phillips, who has a book to promote, don't you know?
If you're going to stand on a party manifesto which makes promises, the electorate want you to keep to those promises, don't they?
It's funny because
the part of
electorate
the problem,
never ever say that to me in my constituency.
What do they vote for?
Literally never. No one has ever said to me. But you said in your manifesto, which I very much doubt many people.
So should we take no notice of manifestos?
Read. To be perfectly honest, I think that there is an argument to be said that you can never, ever deliver all of those things that you're pretending that you can deliver when you go to the electorate.
What?
And that in reality, things change. Globally, things change. And situations change, facts change. You have to, as a politician.
It's incredibly honest, Esther, here this morning that you're saying don't trust what's in a manifesto because, let's be honest, we can't deliver it.
Well, not in all cases.
Yeah. Don't trust what's in the manifesto. Don't trust us because in many cases, we won't be able to deliver it. Tom?
No. Could you repeat it? Because I can't believe my fucking ears.
Well, she's just let the cat out of the bag, basically. Because we're not in control. We make a lot of promises, but ultimately we're not running things. That's what she means. Phillips. So on her party's commitment to a second referendum then, in defiance of the first referendum result, more from Jess Phillips.
I don't particularly want one.
Pinocchio, right?
We don't have to have one.
I think that the only answer, actually, to this deadlock for the nation is for the nation to take part in this conversation again.
You've just said we shouldn't trust politicians because when we have elections...
I didn't say that we shouldn't trust politicians. I said that
they stand on manifestos that they don't necessarily believe in.
No, I didn't...
Well done, Susanna.
Say that they don't necessarily believe in them, that they can't necessarily deliver. They can't necessarily deliver because we don't control everything that happens.
Oh, we know that all too well, don't we?
Governance is so much more complicated than people want to think.
She's telling the truth here. But she doesn't realise she's telling the truth. She's laying it out for everybody watching Good Morning Britain this morning about how things really go. We are a bunch of loud-mouthed, wealthy, middle to upper class entitled dickheads. That's what Jess Phillips is saying. Phillips says that's who we are, but we're not really running things. Manifestos are pointless because we don't know whether or not we will be allowed to implement that which we have claimed we will in the event we win. We're not in control. Listen to it. It's good, but not for good reasons. She's not being honest, but she's telling the truth, if you understand.
I think that the only answer, actually, to this deadlock for the nation is for the nation to take part in this conversation again.
But you've just said we shouldn't trust politicians because when we have elections...
I didn't say that we shouldn't trust politicians. I said that
they stand on manifestos that they don't necessarily believe in.
No, I didn't say that they don't necessarily believe in them, that they can't necessarily deliver. They can't necessarily deliver because we don't control everything that happens. Governance is so much more complicated than people want to think.
Democracy is tough.
Want to think that it's a slogan.
Yeah.
People's lives are complicated.
They are.
The world is much more complicated.
And they have got more complicated and more threatening. Do you think that Brexit has led to the death threats that you've had, the attacks that you've had, do you think those are directly related to this particular issue?
What do you think she's going to say?
Yes is the answer to that question, I'm afraid to say. It's not just Brexiteers, though. I wouldn't want to say that one side is... the entire atmosphere of division has led to a much more feral atmosphere. Now, there has always been violence against politicians. There's always been hatred of politicians. I like the idea that this is a new thing. We've not been popular for a long time. But... The reality is at the moment that the level of division and the anxiety that the country genuinely feels, this isn't just politicians, people feel anxious about this. It is spilling out, and it is spilling out aggressively. And unfortunately...
What do you expect, though? You crazy daft bint. What do you expect when, in the most deprived areas of the country, people voted to leave the undemocratic, fascistic European Union? And here we are, approaching we're getting towards mid-autumn, right? 3.5 years later, and we're still not out, and people's lives haven't in any way improved. What do you expect but aggression, anger, vitriol, right? Ad hominem attacks on you and your kind on social media. What else can people do? I've gotten into this before. I won't waste time talking about it again. What is left to people other than to scream abuse at your kind? And by the way, whatever you think of Brendan O'Neill, who writes for Spiked Online, look up online. He wrote a fantastic article about 3 weeks ago where he took Jess Phillips to the cleaners, because Phillips would have you believe that she's a working class lass. She'd have you believe that she's a champion of the working classes, and that she is herself a working class girl, ordinary. And it's a pack of lies, and it's a lie that has been allowed go unchallenged through UK media. She's not working class. She comes from a very privileged background. Read Brendan O'Neill on Spiked. Middle, upper class, wealthy background, father, NHS executive, right? Bullshitter, like Jeremy Corbyn, private school educated Jeremy, Shami Chakrabarti. They're all the same, these people. Liars. Why else do you think people are pissed off? While people like you earn a minimum of 6 figures a year for fucking around and shouting at people in Parliament, while people have nothing, while they're going to food banks because their 0 hours contracts jobs are not paying enough to see them through to the end of the month. And you get a bit riled, do you, when they threaten you on Twitter, huh? What else does she say?
There are some politicians who I think are glad that that is the way it is, that are stoking that division. But the reality...
You're stoking the division. You are. People said leave. You said, no, I don't think we'll do that, so fuck you. That's what you said to the people.
The reality is what I want to stop is I want to...
What does she want to stop now? She's going to tell lies here now. About a week ago, she screamed. Well, she didn't scream. She did scream, but then she calmed down and said to Boris Johnson that words like surrender and betrayal are putting politicians at risk on the streets of the UK. She clearly said that. Changing her tune now, though.
Stop a targeted campaign that uses fear rather than hope to unite the country. And unfortunately, I'm afraid to say that Boris Johnson has a specific campaign that wishes to present the people versus Parliament. It pays his rent. I mean, not rent, his mortgage. I imagine he's got a mortgage, not rent.
Imagine you have too, Jess. I imagine you have too.
Not rent. It pays his rent. It wins him votes to stoke up fear. It's the quickest and easiest way for him to win votes. But it's not the best way, and it's not leadership.
The argument from the Brexiteers is that there's Project Fear on the other side as well, that it's all going to fall apart, everything's going to be disastrous from when the referendum vote happened. That's what they were saying. Everything's going to fall apart, there's going to be a recession, the pound's going to collapse, it's all going to be a nightmare. Yeah. And actually, that hasn't come to pass quite like that.
Exactly. Oh, thank God that at least you had two good questions put to her, I suppose. They got around to talking about death threats then. I don't agree with threatening anybody's life, even if you're just pissed off. I'm not going to condemn the people who do it. I'm not going to utterly condemn them. I'm going to say it's very wrong. And there are laws against it for a very good reason. It's wrong. You should never threaten anybody's life. Ever. Even if you don't mean it. You shouldn't do that. All right? It's wrong. Don't do it. Don't give them the ammo. Don't do it, right? They get around to talking about it anyway.
At the moment, I'm getting a huge amount of death threats, a huge amount, and they are ramping up to be incredibly specific.
Do they come via social media or letter or
email? Quite a lot, but I've had 2 in the post recently, and I'm getting a huge amount of stuff in the post about multiculturalism being genocide and things at the moment, like really nasty stuff.
Because there are a lot of people who genuinely believe that multiculturalism hasn't benefited them and their neighbours and friends and has led to problems with vital public services, of course, but has also led to problems with them getting jobs. They believe this stuff. They're not just a bunch of ignorant, low IQ racists. This means something to them. They understand that multiculturalism hasn't benefited them very well. It's benefited the elites in many ways because it's helped to divide and conquer people. But on another level, it's benefited the elites, the powerful, the wealthy, because they've been able to get very cheap labour. This is interesting, this little thread here. Here she is again.
Them being genocide and things recently, and I'm getting a huge amount of stuff in the post about multiculturalism being genocide and things at the moment, like really nasty stuff.
It's not nasty, it's how people feel. All right? I'm not saying I take a point of view as extreme as that, as multiculturalism being genocide. I don't see that. And you know I don't. But I understand why people think that way.
And on the phone.
Yeah, all of that just goes straight to the police. But somebody, of course, has to read that and is affected by it.
People in my office, many of whom are multicultural themselves, have to sit and open things about how their very existence.
I'd love to know why many of her office staff are multicultural, number one. Is it just coincidental? And I'd really like to know how much they get paid. I'd love to know. If anybody listening to this programme has got the time or the inclination, I'd love to find out what Jess Phillips pays her staff in her office, in her constituency. I know she will be committed by law to paying them the minimum wage, but I'd like to know if she's paying them the minimum wage or if she's paying them some sort of living wage. Now, I know you're going to say, well, Richie, you know, this is all covered anyway. It's covered by expenses. I know that, but I'd like to know.
Existence in the UK is genocide. That's pretty horrendous.
Hang on.
How their very existence in the UK, open things about how their very existence in the UK is genocide. That's pretty horrendous. So
it's not horrendous because the people who are writing those emails are not saying the existence of that person, that human being, is genocide. They are saying, as best as they can, that this situation, open borders, European Union, letting people come in from Eastern Europe and elsewhere and Africa, has fucked it up for us, Jess. It's made it difficult. It's not made it easier. So it's not horrendous. It's a point of view. And while it's a bit more complicated than the naked statement of it's genocide, it is a legitimate point of view, I would argue.
So it's not easy, but I suppose the whole thrust of the book is that if you think that giving up and not speaking up in the face of that will...
This is where she virtue signals to the fucking moon. I'm a great champion. I'm strong. I never give up. I'm Jess Phillips.
Make it better. It won't. Doing nothing changes nothing. And so I have to keep going.
Do you still love being...
She's amazing, isn't she, Jess?
Love being a politician?
Do you love being a politician, Jess? Despite the death threats and the horrible emails about multiculturalism and genocide, despite having to put up with Boris Johnson, do you like it, Jess?
MP.
Go on, Jess. 6 figures minimum salary, houses, staff, expenses. Go on, love. Do you like it?
I mean, love on some days.
She loves it. She loves it.
Not the word that springs immediately to mind. But no, I absolutely do love it. It is a massive privilege, and it's cool as well. I get to do cool things like this.
She gets to do cool things like this while other people get to go to food banks. That's how it goes. 8 minutes past the hour. We've got one story left. I've saved the best till last. I've saved the best till last. You know that old Kay Burley today broadcast for the final time on Sky News in the afternoon. In the afternoon, she's staying with Sky and is moving to the breakfast show programme. She's doing a direct swap with a presenter called Sarah Jane Mee. Kay's going to breakfast. Sarah Jane is going to the afternoon. To the afternoon. No more Kay. No more Kay. In the afternoon, she's gone to breakfast. Right. So what does that mean? Well, it means that she went out with a bang today. The Ginger Ninja was in top form. She was interviewing a Tory MP called Alistair Burt about Johnson's Brexit proposals to the European Union. Have a listen. Again, right? You think the media can't get any worse? Then you hear things like this. Alistair Burt says he wants to leave on October 31st with a deal. You'll first of all hear Alistair Burt in mid-sentence, and then Kay begins the needling as only Kay can do. This is good.
I don't want to see an extension. I want to see a deal and us leaving on October the 31st.
But it looks as though your pesky former boss is trying to find ways around it.
Well, what I heard today was my allegedly pesky former boss trying to do his best to get a deal and being received in exactly the right tone by Parliament, and I hope that will be the same in the European Union. So I think that's what he's trying to do.
How much do you trust him? I mean, his trust has been called into question quite a lot over the last 10 days or so.
Okay, so how much do you trust him, says Kay. Now, she asks him that after Burt said Johnson is trying to do a deal. Just in case there's any confusion, listen to the lead-in to Kay's question because it's important, the context.
Allegedly pesky former boss trying to do his best to get a deal and being received in exactly the right tone by Parliament, and I hope that will be the same in the European Union. So I think that's what he's trying to do.
How much do you trust him? I mean, his trust has been called into question quite a lot over the last 10 days or so.
Right, you get that? He's being asked if he trusts that Johnson is really trying for a deal, so he answers or tries to answer.
He's been very clear with those of us who have met him to talk about a deal, that he wants to see a deal. I'm absolutely convinced he does. I've always felt there have been maybe some around him and some in the Commons who were very indifferent to whether or not we got a deal. There's plenty of voices, as you've heard yourself, over the last 2 or 3 years of people saying what's wrong with WTO and all that. I've never agreed with that. I thought we needed a deal. I think the Prime Minister is absolutely convinced he needs a deal, and he's persuaded me, and I can trust him that he's looking for a deal.
Okay. You
I hope that's the case.
Yeah, I mean, you slightly body swerved what I was trying to ask you, so I'll ask you more directly. What do you think?
He didn't body swerve what you were trying to ask him. He answered it, that he trusts that Johnson is trying to get a deal with the European Union. This is pretty shit again by Kay Burley, who's not had a great week, really. Have a listen.
You slightly body swerved what I was trying to ask you, so I'll ask you more directly. What do you think about his attitude towards women?
Well, you didn't ask me that directly at all. You asked me.
So I am asking you directly. That's what I'm saying. This is my direct question to you. What do you think about his attitude towards women?
I think that's been well over the newspapers. Boris Johnson has a personal life and a private life, which is his. It's now not so private, it's out there. But I think concentrating on the issues we were concentrating on in the House of Commons is the more important thing. It's you'll have to ask him about his attitude.
Yeah, I mean, it's not so private if it's misappropriating public funds, though, is it?
Again, the tone, you see, the attitude of Burley, trying to portray herself as some sort of heavyweight political interviewer, Paxman-esque type figure. This is utter garbage, and to be fair to Bert, he's not having any of it.
Where is it?
How far do you want to go with all these different questions? We're now ranging quite widely.
That's
there will
what
be
I
an
do.
investigation
That's
into
what I do.
Yes, I know, Kay. That is.
She is fucking wretched, Burley, isn't she? In every sense of the word, eh?
That's what I do.
Yes, I know, Kay. That is exactly what you do. That's why we so enjoy speaking to you.
Good man.
There'll be an investigation into the allegations about misappropriation of public funds. I think it's probably better to wait for that, don't you?
Not really, but I'm thrilled that you always enjoy being interviewed by me. Just tell me about...
Not really, says Burley. There is an investigation ongoing. It has begun into whether or not Boris Johnson favoured, financially offered favours to a woman from the United States with whom he may have had a fling with. It's been looked into, and that's not good enough for Kay Burley.
Be an investigation into the allegations about misappropriation of public funds. I think it's probably better to wait for that, don't you?
Not really, but I'm thrilled that you always enjoy being interviewed by me. Just tell me about your badge before you go.
Well, no more, Kay, because I'm leaving, and it will be a sadness, but there we are.
Yeah.
This is a badge about dementia care.
Okay.
And Alzheimer's.
Good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed for joining us on the programme this afternoon. Thrilled always to talk to Mr.
Thank
Burt.
you.
And Burley is only in a job because she's idolised by Rupert Murdoch. And I know this. I have it on good authority. I know this to be absolutely true. She is reviled by those who watch her, mostly. And I have it on good authority that many of those who work around her have no time for her at all. But she's favoured by Murdoch. That's what passes for journalism in the UK today. Absolutely crap. Right, that's about it, by the way, for today. John Parsons in Salford came back to me about a job advertisement on Jess Phillips' website. It's for an assistant, is it, John? I can't find the tweet now, would you believe it? Yeah, it's a job vacancy in her office, 5 days a week, 9 to 5, and £19,600 per annum. Says John. Thanks for that, John. 9 to 5, 5 days a week, vacancy in Phillips' office, £19,600 per annum. That is more than the minimum wage, as far as I understand. I'm pretty sure it is. Not great for Birmingham, though. Well, it's not great for anywhere, really. £19,600 a year, but anyway. Look, that's it for today's programme. Thanks for tuning in as usual. I really appreciate it. We will speak again on Sunday morning when Sunday View takes to the airwaves at 11 o'clock UK time. We'll have a chat about the Sunday papers and what's in them, and we'll also have the best of the morning talk shows as well. Sophie Rage, Andrew Marr, BBC Breakfast, all of that on Sunday morning at 11 a.m. UK time. In the meantime, looking forward again, I've got to mention Salford Red Devils travel to the DW Stadium in Wigan tomorrow evening. It's live on Sky. good luck to Salford Red Devils. All the very best to them. It'll be amazing if they make it to the grand final. They're up against it. St. Helens are the favourites. Understandably, they're a brilliant team. But you never know, do you? You never know in sport. Have a fantastic weekend, you. Look after yourselves and one another. Let's close out the programme today with a bit of Barry White. Bye for now. Bye.